What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to talk about Final Fantasy XVI. Now, I just want to give my final thoughts on the game. Me and Jan had done a recent episode of the Deadhead Podcast, episode 29, where we discuss more details and more story beats and go into way more detail than what I plan to go to in this review. So, if you want to hear those, I'll probably put it at the top of this video here. I'll also put it at the end of this video. Just go check it out. I hope you guys like. We went into some really good detail, had some really good thoughts on different parts of the story and the combat, things like that. And I'll go into some of that stuff here, but it'll just be more of a shell of what we talked about in the episode. So anyway, with that being said, don't forget to like this video and sub to the channel for more reviews like this one. And with that being said, let's talk about Final Fantasy 16. So let me just say this. This is a really good game. Now, is this game an RPG? No, it is not. And it's far from it. There's bits and pieces sprinkled in there that maybe could potentially put it in the light RPG elements range, but this is not an RPG. It was not advertised as an RPG. And I think that a lot of reviewers who reviewed this game before the game was released looked at it in a lens that I don't think was quite fair. So I'm going to try to look at this game in this review in a different light as someone who has more than half a brain that knew that Square Enix and director of this game had said that this was going to be a change for the franchise. So with that being said, not to be disrespectful to the reviewers who have reviewed this game before, they are getting paid to do this, and they had good thoughts, but I just feel like I'm going to look at this in a different kind of way. So, Final Fantasy 16. This game is a really good game, like I stated before. You can see the money, you can see the effort, you can see the potential in the narrative cutscenes of this game. And let's talk about the cutscenes for a second and the story as a whole. The story, you start out with Clive. Clive is a first shield of his brother Joshua in the kingdom of Rosaria before turmoil strikes and he loses, and Clive loses everything. And the story goes from there, and it's really touching, and it makes a lot of sense. And this act of vengeance that Clive has been going through for the past 13 years after the fall of Rosaria, it's believable, and it's very interesting. Right after all that stuff ends, and I'm not going to go into real spoilers here with the narrative, I started to lose interest. I just felt like it was not nearly as captivating as the first half of this game, maybe the first quarter of this game, because in the quarter you kind of have some things happen and some things reveal, and it's like, okay, I've kind of lost interest in the narrative. And by the end of the game, while it was epic, it didn't really hit as hard as it probably should have for a number of reasons. And I'm not going to sit here and go into all those. I talk about it in the episode of the podcast. Definitely go check that out. The story is okay, but the presentation, the cutscenes themselves are really well done. Now, are they the level of God of War Ragnarok? Are they the level of The Last of Us? No, they are not. Me and Jan talk about in the podcast how the cutscenes in this game are really well done, but they are not to the level of the games I just mentioned. I find myself always watching those cutscenes in God of War Ragnarok, Last of Us, and I've been on multiple playthroughs of each, and I still go back and I watch the cutscenes, and I'm still captivated by the story they're conveying to the player. In Final Fantasy 16, if I ever go back and play this game again, which I'm sure I will at some point, I will not be watching these cutscenes. They're drawn out, they are longer, and that's not really an issue, but there's a lot of boring dialogue here. Not really as much in the cutscenes per se, it's more of in the quote-unquote open parts of the game where you come into contact with other NPCs or giving out side quests. It makes me want to, it makes me want to fall asleep, but my eyes will literally start glazing over, and I'm looking at my phone a lot just trying to get past this boring-ass dialogue. So that is an issue. Let's go to the heavy hitter of this game, and that is the combat. What do we think about the combat? Because this is a main, besides the cutscenes, this is a main focus of the game. The combat can be fun. Listen, I put nearly 65 hours into this game. I've done all the side quests. I did one chronolith trial, but I've pretty much done everything I wanted to do in this game. So I put a lot of time into this game, and I've dealt with the combat. I've learned all the icon abilities. I have done everything this game has to offer me in the ways of combat. I think it can be fun. I think it is fun. I think you feel powerful. Clive is a fucking beast. But it gets kind of old after a while. This game, because it has this lack of has plenty of those, has plenty of side quests, but lack of other activities to do and other things that can keep the player busy in between the main portions of the game is very abysmal. It's almost, you better like the combat, because if you don't like the combat, there's literally nothing else to do in this game. So that can be looked at as a negative. I'm not going to really say it's a negative. However, I believe that the creators of this game really wanted to hammer home, hey, listen, here's our combat. You have to fucking do this, and you better like it. And for the most part, I do. It is not better than Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat system. I wouldn't even say it's better than a turn-based system. It is action at its truest form. It is Devil May Cry, and if you like that, then you will like this combat. And I enjoyed the combat for the most part. I'll talk about in our most recent episode that I felt like after a while the combat was getting stale because I felt like I was mopping everything. But there is some challenge to be had. And I think that when some people say this game is too easy, I agree for the most part. But I think also, too, the people that say spam square and you can kill everything, that is false. Unless you're using those handicapped little baby accessories like the little rings and time helpers and things like that in the game. This game has a little bit of strategy to it. It's not a lot, but there is a little bit. And speaking of things that can really actively change combat and things in the world, this game lacks status effects, and that is huge for an RPG, huge for Final Fantasy. And I was actively missing these elements of a Final Fantasy game. Having status effects, using fire against a water based enemy, using electricity, using thunder on a water infused enemy. That's things that I miss desperately in this game. And in this game I've used fire to fight fire, and that shouldn't work, but it does. And when it does that, these are just little things that really add to the enjoyment of the gameplay experience. And without them being there, this game kind of falls flat for me in those departments. It feels like, okay, I dodge, I strike, I do an ability, I dodge, I strike, I wait for my ability to refill, I do it again, I switch to my other icon ability, and so on and so forth, rinse and repeat. Now, let me just also say that games in general can be repetitive. Games in general. It just depends on your level of enjoyment. Are you having fun with the finished product? So you can't really say it's repetitive because every game is repetitive. But I start to find myself kind of ready for it to be over. I found myself being distracted by my phone, or honestly talking to the wife about day-to-day shit while I'm playing this game because the combat was getting very, very monotonous. But all in all, it's a good time with the combat. Let's talk about the characters around Clive. They kind of suck. I'm just going to be honest with you. Listen, I do not like the characters in this game. I think they're okay. I think they're fine. I don't think they're bad, but this might be the most least memorable characters in a Final Fantasy game to date. I think that they are lifeless. I feel like they don't cooperate with each other. A lack of a party system, a real party system, right? I can hear people in the comments. This game does have a party system. A real party system where you can actually be around your companions a bit more, where you can control them a bit more in battle, where you can do things with them outside of battle, outside of missions, have little different discussions and scenarios and things like that. This game is absent of those. And so every companion you have by your side feels empty. They feel like they're just there for the sake of having them, and they don't have any real weight when certain things happen to them or certain situations occur with them in the middle. So it's just really, really hard to like the characters in the game. Clive, I think they did a great job with. Clive is a very open character. They could easily made him very brooding, made him very, his feelings being very away from everyone else's, trying to hide those, trying to act tough and macho, and they don't do that. And they make him a very, very vivid character, and I really enjoyed that part. But I think it would have been better if you had the likes of Jill and Sid and a few others in there that I'm not going to say that can make Clive even better because they're good characters. So, all in all, we go into a little bit more detail in the episode of the podcast. So I really just want to make this video, throw some gameplay up on the screen, and put my review out there. Final Fantasy 16 is a decent game. It's nothing special. It's nothing going to blow you away. Do I like it better than Final Fantasy 15? That's hard to say. I mean, it depends. You ask me one day, sure. You ask me another, no. I think that this game has potential. I see the potential. I'm just not a fan of the characters. The main villain was pretty weak too. I didn't really mention him as well. But he's pretty weak, pretty generic. Another god, right? Another dude. That's a god with a damn righteous god complex that we've seen a lot, and I'm just not a huge fan of. So it's just. I feel like this is some of the same old when it comes to story tropes, but just nowhere near as good because the cast of characters are just not as good, and it affects Clive's story, whether Clive is a pretty decently written character or not. If you don't have supporting characters to promote your main character, the story falls flat. And I think everywhere in this game it falls flat, even the combat to a certain extent. So I know this sounds very negative, but I think with everything else in the game, there's not a whole lot of exploration, but the environments look okay. I had a little bit of performance issues, but that kind of evened itself out after I got farther in the game. So all in all, I think I'm going to give this game a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. It could be an 8. You ask me another day. I think it's a solid game, but I think that it's lacking in a lot of departments. There's not as many iconic music. The characters are very okay and mediocre. I feel like the story is very mediocre. The combat can be fun, but gets old after a while. There's a lot to like here, but as everything that you do like, there's always 2 or 3 things that pop up that are not as good, and I think that is the story of Final Fantasy 16. So anyway, with that being said, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about Final Fantasy 16 and what are you looking forward to in this long-running series forward. Are you ready for Final Fantasy 17? Are you wanting it to be kind of close to 16? I hope not. Do you want to be closer to Final Fantasy 7, the remakes, and with the remake and then Rebirth coming out early 2024? Let me know down in the comments below, and don't forget to hit a like on this video and sub to the channel. We really would appreciate it. And with that being said, we'll see you in the next video. Stay dead, my friends.
Let's roll ready.